Welcome to the Animal Training Academy podcast show. I'm your host, Ryan Carledge, and I'm passionate about helping you master your animal training skills using the most positive and least intrusive approaches. Here at ATA, we understand that navigating the vast challenges you encounter in training requires a comprehensive base of knowledge and experience. It's common to face obstacles and rough patches on your journey that can leave you feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Therefore, since 2015, we've been on a mission to empower animal training geeks worldwide. We've aided thousands in developing their skills, expanding their knowledge, boosting their confidence, and maximizing their positive impact on all the animal and human learners they work with. We are excited to do the same for you. Simply visit www.atamember.com, join our vibrant community, and geek out with us. And of course, in the meantime, enjoy this free podcast episode as we explore new ways to help you supercharge your training skills, grow your knowledge, and build your confidence, so that you can craft a life that positively impacts every learner you encounter. But we will start today's episode where I'm thrilled to welcome back to the ATA podcast show the wonderful Dr. Keira Moore. Now, if you haven't listened to the first part of our conversation, you can find it in the previous episode on whatever app you're listening to the show on. In that episode, we explored Dr. Moore's journey in getting started with behavior analysis, psychology, dog training, animal training, and what led her to her current role, working as a dog trainer, coming from a background working with human learners. And we ended up talking about radical behaviorism and looking at anxiety through a behavioral analytical lens. So it's definitely worth a listen. However, if you haven't listened to it yet, no worries. You're, of course, welcome to start here with part 2, where you're still going to gain plenty of insights to help you grow your skills, knowledge, and confidence in animal training. So let's dive in. Keira, thanks so much for taking the time to come and hang out with us again at the Animal Training Academy.
Yeah, thank you for having me. We jumped right in the deep end before, so
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. And you, as we learned in part 1, of course, have such unique knowledge and experience, making you a strong advocate and subject matter expert on what we're going to talk about today. As both a Board Certified Behavior Analyst and a Karen Pryor Certified Dog Trainer, among other things, your perspective is invaluable in discussing the science and its practical application, which is something that we dove into in part 1. So I can't wait to hear your thoughts more on this, on how we can ground our work in the science. You'll put together a list of 5 ways we can do this, how we can bring our work back to the science. Can you kick us off with idea number 1?
yeah. So I wasn't sure exactly where we would go in what we talked about today, but I wrote down my list of 5 things, and it turns out it tracks really well with what we talked about in the first episode. So the first thing that I had written down was learn about radical behaviorism, which, yay, you all can partially check that off your list if you listened to the first half. I think like we were talking about before, it's really important for people to be not just good practitioners, but also to understand the science and the philosophy and theory behind the science. And like I was saying before, I don't want to discount at all of the amazing practitioners that we have. There are many, many people, both in the animal training world and in the human behavior analysis world, who are fantastic practitioners, even without necessarily understanding or being able to articulate the science behind what they're doing. One of the in my opinion, best dog trainers that I have ever had experience with and who taught me a lot of what I know is a person by the name of Sue Aylesby. And she is up in some freezing cold part of Canada. And I always tell people, I think she is perhaps one of the best practitioners of behavior analysis that I know when it comes to dog training. But I don't know that she'd necessarily consider herself a behavior analyst or that she could tell you anything about B.F. Skinner or the science. Maybe she can. I've never had these discussions with her. But you can be a wonderful practitioner. You can be a great dog trainer. You can be a great clinician without knowing the science. But I think for people, especially if they are early in their career, what is going to really potentially set you apart in terms of being able to pivot really well in the field and be able to work with different types of learners on different types of problems is if you really understand the science behind what you're doing and the philosophy behind that science. So understanding radical behaviorism and understanding behavior analysis, because you can always then come back to that. If you encounter a problem that you've never worked with before, you'll be able to figure it out. Even if you've never done it before, even if you don't know practically how to handle it, you can go back to that science. I have this, I feel like sometimes I joke that radical behaviorism is a bit like a religion, where once you buy in and once you again have those glasses on, it's hard to see the world any other way. And I think that's a good thing, because I think if you have your behavior analyst glasses on, you are automatically going to be more compassionate, because you are going to think about behavior in a different way. You're not going to blame the person or blame the learner or blame the animal. You're going to think about what in the environment has led this learner to the behavior that they're engaging in. And so I think having an understanding of radical behaviorism in that worldview is generally a really good thing for everyone, because Skinner originally, I don't think, intended behavior analysis to just be something that gets used with people with autism or with animals or with whatever little small group we've applied it to. He thought it was going to be something that would change the world. And I think it could be still, if we could get more people thinking that way. And so that's I think my most important thing is that anybody who is working with any learners and trying to change behavior in any way with any species, understand radical behaviorism. A really good intro to that, because I know that it's a big, scary topic, and it is not it's not easy to find a good entry point. There is a TED Talk by Pat Fryman, who is a behavior analyst, and it's called No Such Thing as a Bad Boy. So if you look up Pat Fryman, F-R-I-M-A-N, No Such Thing as a Bad Boy, you'll find his TED Talk. There's also a paper in the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis that goes along with that TED Talk. So if you want the written sciencey version of it, look at that paper by the same, I think it's by the same name. And that is a really great introduction to the philosophy of radical behaviorism. Pat refers to it as, he talks about it as basically, I'm not going to try and summarize how he talks about it, because he does it so incredibly well that I can't do it justice. But that's a really great entry point. And if you're feeling really brave, start reading B.F. Skinner. Start picking up those red and black books that are all of Skinner's writings and dive in, because man, there's just a wealth of information in there that is good stuff to read. I will admit it is very difficult to read. It's very difficult to dissect. So I think having people you can talk to about it and work through that material with can be really helpful. I am 100% down to do BF Skinner reading groups if anybody out there is interested in that. contact me. We'll make it happen. But yeah, I think that's my first most important thing. Learn about radical behaviorism.
I think Kiki, your blonde, who you know, is
Mm-hmm.
doing BF Skinner reading groups
Mm-hmm.
via Behavior Works.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Kiki is great.
Kiki, we love you. If in a non-weird way, it's like that sounds weird. Can I play devil's advocate? Not because I disagree
Yeah.
with that. I'm the person who's always taught the science first.
Mm-hmm.
But I recently had experience with a fantastic trainer, and we were talking about this because they kind of dive straight in and just get really practical with a new learner and don't really talk that way. And I don't want to say who it was or what the situation was because I'm really worried about like not understanding the situation that I was in and the conversations that I had. But if I remember the conversations we had correctly, there was a promotion for leaving the science aside in this particular person, and everyone's different, and I want to acknowledge that. So there's no one size fits all, um, because that can trip people up who are trying to like think about the words and do everything so analytical. And so I am with you. Like I'm like, let's teach the science first and get the knowledge. But then I'm also like, I saw a different way of doing things, and I was like, oh, that makes sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can see where sometimes like the textbook and systematic way that I teach can get in the way of learners.
Yeah. Yep. I can see that.
Yeah, throwing that at you and seeing your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for a beginner practitioner, and whether we're talking about dog trainer or an RBT, which is essentially a human registered behavior technician. That's where the entry level, if you're doing direct care with people in ABA. I think at those levels, you need just a basic understanding to be able to do it and do it reasonably well, to be a practitioner. To be somebody who is going to write programming to change behavior or to kind of be the next level up of what would be the equivalent of a BCBA in the human world, or what would be a dog trainer who is coming in and working on specific behavior problems or problem solving when things aren't going right. I think you, at some level, have to know the science, because when your typical protocols or when your typical ways of doing things aren't working, to be able to pivot and do something that is going to be effective, you're going to have the best chance of doing that if you understand what you're doing, if you understand the science behind what you're doing. And again, sure, I know plenty of fantastic dog trainers that I think have hit on the right things, because that's how behavior works, right? What's successful gets repeated. And so if you've been a dog trainer for a long time, likely you're doing a lot of things that are best practice and that are based in behavior analysis, because those end up being the things that work. But I think having an understanding of the science and the philosophy behind it can make you more effective and efficient, right? Like if I'm working with a dog with a behavior problem and I'm just trying things that have worked in the past for other similar dogs and it happens to work, great. If it doesn't happen to work, I might throw some other things at it and hope for the best. But wouldn't it be even better if I understood how the science of behavior is working, to be able to just effectively come up with a good treatment the very first go around, and to kind of get rid of all that noise? I think one thing that I see a lot, and this is, I hope doesn't rub anybody the wrong way, but I see a lot of practices in dog training that are becoming kind of commonly accepted or mainstream, like everybody's doing this thing now, or everyone's doing this thing now, that in my opinion have a lot of extra fluff in them. There's a lot of extra things that maybe don't need to be there, and that if we understand the science and we can boil down what's really going to be effective, then we can kind of get rid of all the extras and the fluff and the extra noise and just drill right down to that problem and fix the problem. So I do think you can be a fantastic dog trainer. I think you can be a fantastic registered behavior technician. I think you can do plenty to change behavior and be really effective without knowing the science, without understanding radical behaviorism. But I think if you're going to get to that next level of being able to really solve any problem that comes your way and pivot quickly when something's not working and understand how to cut out all the extra fluff and be really efficient and effective, you have to know the science at some point. It's a bit like being playing pool or playing billiards. Do you call it pool?
We call it pool and billiards. They're different games.
That wasn't. I was thinking, is that an American thing? But you could be really good at that without understanding physics, right? But if you're going to be like one of the best pool players in the world, you probably have to have some understanding of physics and how the balls are going to move and angles and what's going to be effective. And that's going to level up your game. So I think it's the same in the world of behavior analysis.
I hadn't thought about that before, but now I want to learn physics just so I can beat my friends better. Yeah, some pretty intense pool competitions. I agree with you, and I think that all totally makes sense. And then the nuance of the devil advocacy part that I was playing was where do you, and I'm not talking about, and I don't think I'm talking about it. And if you have any thoughts on this, let me know. Teaching clients, like we're going to someone's home and we're teaching them. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about teaching people who are learning about animal training and where to start. So not like you should never learn about science or you should learn about science, because I think in my personal opinion, everyone should. It's like how do you springboard learners off as best we can when we start them? And again,
that's a good question.
Obviously, that's different for everyone. But there's pros and cons, I think, to...
Yeah, it depends what the person's goals are, I suppose. That if you're maybe taking a new animal trainer under your wing and saying, what do you want to do and where's your career headed? Like, do you want to, I don't know, do you want to just be working, on teaching puppies and running puppy classes? And I think you could get by doing those things or doing trick training or doing, like specializing in one particular thing and learning the kind of protocols and procedures and how to be a good practitioner and be perfectly successful there. So I think it really depends on your goals. And when I'm working with clients, I'm not being like, you got to go read B.F. Skinner. And have you ever heard of radical behaviorism? As much as I'd love to spend time talking about those things, I don't. I explain that I'm a behavior analyst. And often I'll talk clients through like a very basic understanding of that. But more so, I'm trying to sprinkle in understanding that your dog isn't being bad. Your dog is not doing things wrong. Your dog is doing what works for them in this situation. And it's our job to figure out where that behavior came from and what they're telling us with that behavior and how we can get their needs met in a better way. And when I talk about it that way, I think that kind of summarizes radical behaviorism, is that we're trying to figure out how the environment affects behavior, how behavior was learned. And in cases where behavior currently is not what we'd like it to be, going, okay, that behavior is still important to that learner and they're still getting something out of it. So how can we make sure that that need is still met, but teach them a better way to get that need met? And I think that's an eye-opening thing for a lot of dog owners to think about behavior that way. And I've had plenty of dog owners comment on like, oh, my kid also is having this problem. And I've been thinking about it that same way of like, oh, they're communicating something with their behavior, or my husband's doing this thing. And I've been thinking about how can I fix it in a similar way to what I'm doing in this dog training that I'm doing with you. And that's what I want. I want people to be open to that kind of conceptualization of behavior and that kind of compassionate approach to going, oh, oh, that behavior is happening for a reason. It's not because my dog is being a jerk or because my husband's just trying to annoy me. There's a reason for behavior.
I am sometimes use the word sometimes very loosely reinforced for annoying my wife.
Oh,
My poor wife.
my significant other is absolutely that is very big, and he will tell you as much.
Right, but and so to go back to the examples, you can be a great practitioner at running puppy classes or being a trick trainer, but to use your billiard or pool example, if you want to be the best trick trainer in the world, then you should maybe understand more about the science. Let's leave number one with this quote from you. It's our job to figure out where that behavior came from and what they are telling us and how we can get their needs met in a better way. What's number two that you wrote down?
Follow the science. This is going to sound similar, but what I mean by that is pay attention to the people who know the science well, or to the actual science. If you're somebody who likes to read science and is able to access scientific journals and is able to sift through data and read things like that and make sense of it, great. If that's not you, which that's not most of us, most of us are not willing or able to review scientific journals and make sense of them, follow the people who are already doing that work for us and the people who do understand the science well and can articulate accurately how that science applies to what we're doing. So some really good examples of that. Eileen Anderson is phenomenal, and I'm betting a lot of your listeners are already familiar with her and her Eileen and Dogs blog. That's exactly what she does. She loves reading the science, and she's a great person that if you have a question about something related to dog training that you don't understand or that you're wondering, is this scientifically accurate? You could ask Eileen, and Eileen will gladly go do that research and comb through all of the journals and come up with a really concise, well-written article about it. I've even gone to her with questions about things and said, like, I know that I have access to all of these journals and I could easily look this up myself, but I bet you already know the answer to this. So she's a great one to follow and pay attention to. Susan Friedman. Susan is so good at explaining the science in such easy to understand ways. I'm in her I'm observing LLA this round. I took LLA with her a couple of years ago. I'm observing now and hoping to get more involved in TAing in the future. But she is just so good at explaining the science in a way that's understandable and knowing the science inside and out. Kiki Yaban, who we already talked about, same thing. She's another one that has a really great understanding of the science of behavior analysis and how to apply that to dog training. Stephanie Kesey-Phelan of Dog Behavior Institute, another one. She has a PhD in behavior analysis. She's got a very similar background to me. We actually came up through our clinical work in the same area in Boston and have a lot of the same mutual contacts. So look for people like that have a good handle on the science and are good at translating that to the things people are doing and being able to explain, are these things rooted in science? Are these things evidence-based procedures? And how do they tie back to our science?
Well, if you check out our sister podcast, Making Ripples, hosted by the wonderful Shelley Wood, time of recording this, Aileen Anderson was our latest guest.
Oh, really?
But by the time this comes out, she won't be. But if you go back a few episodes in the Making Ripples, Animal Training Academy Making Ripples podcast, I love, and also by the time this is released, will be a few episodes past episode 250, where we had Dr. Susan Friedman on, who joins us every 50th episode. And what I love, Keira, about doing every 50 episodes with her is I asked her what she wanted to talk about and she kind of talks about what's kind of keeping her busy and keeping her thoughts occupied. Asked her what she wanted to talk about for episode 250, and she said negative reinforcement and non-linear contingency analysis. And when I asked her for episode number 200 what she wanted to talk about, so 50 episodes earlier, nearly 2 years earlier, she said negative reinforcement and non-linear contingency analysis. So following the science through this podcast show, and I lean on Susan a lot to go, cool, what have you learned over the last 2 years about what we talked about 2 years ago, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So if you're listening to this, then that episode will already be out, both of those, and you can listen to those. Kiki Yablon, part of Animal Training Academy as well. And who was the last person you mentioned?
Stephanie Kesey-Phelan of the Dog Behavior Institute. They do a lot of really great webinars. She's also a human behavior analyst that is now primarily working in the dog training realm. And I'm sure there's plenty of other ones that I've missed too, but those are off the top of my head, my go-to people.
So well, I've written her name down, so keep your eyes out, listeners, for future episodes. What's number 3 that you've written down for us, Keira? I'm loving this.
These are all of the same theme, but number 3 is be conceptually systematic. And what I mean by that is tie your practices back to the science and call them what they are. I have big feelings about this. In dog training in particular, there's a lot of branding that happens where people come up with a procedure that is working well, and then they give it some name that usually they made up or they, I don't know, coined in using it. Which I think is good in the sense that those names of procedures are often very descriptive of the procedure and help people understand what's actually happening. Like start buttons are a good example. When we talk about start buttons, most people understand exactly what's going on. Just by saying start button, you can already, if you've never heard of it, you can probably guess what it might be. Or pattern games, things like that. My thing that I think feels frustrating to me as a behavior analyst who I guess started in the science and then moved into the practice, which I think is opposite of what a lot of people do. A lot of people start in the practice and then go back and learn the science. When we aren't conceptually systematic, meaning we're not tying our practices back to the science and calling them what they are using the scientific terms, we might lose the plot a little bit. And we might, again, end up adding in some extra fluff that we don't need if we're not thinking about, well, wait a minute, why would this procedure be working? Or what is happening from a scientific perspective based on what we know about behavior? So that's something that I really want to encourage more people to do is look at your procedures, and especially procedures that have been sort of branded or given names that are commonly accepted in the field now. Try to tie those things back to the science and understand what's going on. And I think by keeping a common technical vernacular and making sure that people understand a lot of those protocols and procedures already have names in behavior analysis, it helps us all stay on the same page with what we're doing. And it helps us tie back our practice to evidence-based procedures to make sure that we are using evidence-based procedures and that we're not wasting people's time or money doing things that aren't going to work. So I think that's an important thing. And I think that's something people kind of get feisty about sometimes and fight about a little bit, of like not wanting to use technical terminology or not wanting to, like, why can't we just call it this? And in my mind, it's because it makes it much harder to sift out what is good evidence-based practice that's based on what we already know about the science, and what is fluff that somebody made up that they might be saying, yeah, this works, and this is what I do. And how do we delineate between things that people are making up and branding and selling to make money off of procedures versus procedures that are tied back to the science and evidence-based? So not talking negatively about any of those things that I mentioned, like start buttons. I use those all the time. I think that's a lovely procedure. I think it has plenty of evidence based, and we can tie it back to behavior analysis. But I think it's important to do that, to be conceptually systematic.
I mean, Susan talks about an LLA, and I was trying to quickly find the word there, the fear of scientific terminology.
I have heard her say that before, and I feel like she just said it recently, and I don't remember what the term is.
Yeah, I tried to ask ChatGPT there when you were talking, but it's not smart enough.
Even little things like in dog training, we talk about proofing. I'm not quite sure where that word came from, but the technical term for that is generalization. And I think that, again, the reason that matters is, let's say I'm a young dog trainer that's like learning about the science as much as I can, and I want to know what's the best way to proof something. Well, if I go and look that up, and I go and I try to do a scientific search of that, I'm not going to find anything, because all the research that's been done on it is on generalization. But if I go into the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis or the Journal of Experimental Analysis of Behavior, and I look up generalization, I'm going to be inundated with studies on that and best practice on that. And there's a ton of stuff out there already. And so I worry sometimes when we give things new names, or we call things by something other than what they have been known in the science as, that we're going to lose people, or make it harder for people to sift through what's good evidence-based practice and what's not.
But Keira, I really like shiny things.
Same.
when I see a shiny thing, like I really want it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the thing that is, I think, a little bit frustrating is there's not a whole lot new and shiny in behavior analysis right now. Like, we know all the main things that we really need to know, I think, to solve most problems that we're going to need to solve. And it is rare now in applied behavior analysis that there's new terms popping up, or new, like totally brand new procedures that no one ever thought of. It's always different twists on the same old ideas and the same old tried and true evidence-based procedures. And so I think people should be, when some shiny new procedure pops up, you should be skeptical, not of the person or of the procedure, but you should be at least going, what is this? What is this in behavior analytic terminology, or in how does this fit into our conceptualization of how behavior works? And does it? And if it doesn't, then we should be scratching our head and going, wait a minute, should I follow this shiny new thing, or is this a waste of my time? Because it might be.
That is a great reminder, and that's why I value Kiki Yablon's contributions to our membership community so much. She often comes in and does exactly that to conversations, and provides so much value in that way. And very grateful for that. All right, we've got number 1, talking about radical behaviorism. Number 2, follow the science. Number 3, be conceptually systematic. Hit us with number 4.
Number 4 is a little bit of a cheater one, because it kind of stems off of number 3. But if you are a practitioner, if you're a dog trainer, or even a human practitioner, or any kind of animal trainer, ask a lot of questions and ask people to explain the science behind their procedures. So when I say be conceptually systematic, I think that's aimed more towards the people who are coming up with the procedures. Number 4, ask questions and ask people to explain the science is aimed a little bit more at the people who aren't necessarily the ones coming up with the procedures, but are the ones following that shiny new thing. When you see somebody selling a class or a course, or doing their thing on social media and saying, this is how I do this thing, and it's called this, or this is how you should do this thing, ask a lot of questions and ask that person if they can explain the science behind what they're doing. And if they can't, and if you can't, or you can't, you can go to those people that I mentioned before, those people who know the science well, and ask them to help you figure that out. But if they can't, or you can't, or the person who made up the procedure can't, consider whether it's worth following that thing and doing that thing just because someone said that you should, or that that's how they do it, or just because that person has a lot of followers, or they're teaching a class on this thing that they made up. Look at where the science goes. Look at evidence-based best practice and see, does this make sense? And again, these all tie together, because this goes back to, you have to understand the science first to know if a procedure is worth doing.
So you're saying that we have to think harder about things and be critical thinkers?
Yeah, imagine that in this day and age. Not a lot of people's strong suit, I think.
No, it's a couple of years ago when we were doing kind of deep dives on topics and on a monthly basis within our membership. And I asked Susan to do something with us one month, and I asked for her ideas on what she would most like to talk to our community about, and our community is one that she knows very well, and she chose critical thinking. That was the most important thing
Yeah.
for her to talk about. So I love that we're talking about that here today as well. And I love that this episode is going to follow the one we recently recorded with Susan. I think for you to listen to, it's going to be a nice flow with a little bit of Peggy Hogan sandwiched in the middle there. But we absolutely always value Peggy wherever she shows up. All right, number 5, the last one. You've left the best for last.
This one is goes in a slightly different direction, I think, but I guess sort of in the same vein. Always keep learning and find communities of like-minded trainers that you can bounce ideas off of. And this, I guess, is a long-winded way of saying something that one of my mentors in my doctoral program told me. Greg Hanley, who I bet some of your listeners know, because I think I've heard you refer to him. Did you have him on the podcast at one point?
Yeah, I saw.
I thought so.
Yeah, Greg Hanley came to Auckland for ABA week, like
Okay.
a decade ago or something, and he's been on the podcast show.
So for anybody that doesn't know him, he's a human behavior analyst, and he I would say right now he works primarily in the area of challenging behavior, a lot with people on the autism spectrum. And he was one of my mentors in my graduate program. He was actually the director of my doctoral program. And one thing that he said in my program that has always stuck with me was, don't do behavior analysis in your garage. And what he meant by that was, no matter where you end up in your career, you should never be doing this alone. When you are changing behavior, regardless of who your learner is, that is a weighty responsibility to have. If you are going to be changing a learner's behavior, you need to be very thoughtful about what you're doing, and you should not be working by yourself and making decisions by yourself. You should have a community of people that you can bounce ideas off of and that you can work through problems with and talk to about the things that you're doing to check yourself and make sure that you are doing good ethical practice, but also good evidence-based practice. And I think in dog training especially, that can be hard because you're often doing it by yourself, right? There's at least where I am, there are, I think, 2 or 3 other KPA-CTPs around. I've connected with one of them, but even then, like I'm practicing largely on my own. And when I'm writing a behavior plan for a dog, I'm not working with a team of people, but I've tried to surround myself with people who know more than I do. That's always my goal, is surround yourself with people who are better than you are and know more than you are, and bounce ideas off of them and learn from them. And so people like Kiki has been, I am eternally grateful to Kiki for when shortly after I got my dog, who was having a lot of behavior problems, I went, okay, I need to find the experts. I need to find the best behavior analysts and dog trainers that I can find and get their help, because I'm a behavior analyst and I don't even know where to start with this dog. And people like Kiki and people like Sue Ailsby were crucial for me to figure that out and to start to develop my own skills and learn. And still, when I have a difficult case, or when I'm working on a new problem that I haven't worked on before, I'll bounce ideas off of other dog trainers. Sometimes I'll go to people like Eileen Anderson and say, does this make sense from a conceptually systematic standpoint? Am I still doing behavior analysis here? Because this is different than what I've done before. And a lot of times I'll go to my human behavior analyst colleagues who don't work with dogs at all and say, hey, I'm coming up with this program for this dog, and I know you're not a dog trainer, but I want you to just look at this as a behavior analyst and see if this makes sense to you or if I'm missing something. And so I think it's really important to always, one, keep learning, and two, have a community of people that you can bounce ideas off of, and people that are of the same mindset as you, that are hopefully radical behaviorists.
Well, I like to additionally think that at Animal Training Academy, all I've done is build the academy by surrounding myself with people who are way smarter than me. And if you listen to this podcast, there's 253 episodes now. So you can very easily do that as well. And I love this because, Keira, people join Animal Training Academy because they want knowledge most of the time. Oh, Susan Freeman's talking about this, or someone else is talking about this. Let me join that webinar. But people stay. I mean, we have members who have been with us for 6-7 years, and they work across all industries that care for learners, mostly animals, and all species. And so you can imagine the amount of problems that these people face in their work, and the live sessions that we do every month to have those super focused on those individual members' problems. It's pretty hard.
Yeah.
So why do they stay with us for 5-6 years? It's because of the community. And I've never, and I've always found it challenging to communicate their value to someone who doesn't have it. At the same time, I know that when we did a survey a couple of years ago, Keira, we asked people what their biggest problems were, and one of it, not the biggest or the most repeated problem, was loneliness. And it was not like I'm lonely, I'm sad, but like I'm geographically isolated, or and that was the main one, geographically, or I'm isolated in my organization. So, and I love Greg Hanley. So he's done an episode with us, and the one thing that members in our community repeat from that episode to this day is your training televisable? Meaning, like, would you allow others to view this? Like, would it be not intrusive from that metric? So I love "Don't Be in Your Garage" as well. It kind of seems like it's in a similar quote book. No matter where you end up
that's one of the other main things that I took away from working with him is you should feel comfortable doing what you do in front of other people. And if you don't, you should be questioning what you do. And I exclusively train, I do just private sessions. So when I'm working, aside from the occasional puppy training, when I'm working, the dog guardian is there watching, and I should feel comfortable about what I'm doing all the time. If I don't, we've got a problem. But it's the same with humans as well.
I'm gonna update Greg's comment and say, is it Instagrammable? Or I can try to be cool and
Yes.
say, is it TikTokable? But I don't have a TikTok account.
Although
Well,
I feel like nothing is safe on social media.
You're right.
You could be doing the best training
Right.
ever and someone's gonna have a problem with it.
Probably get elected.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've never thought about those things before, that it's such a weighty responsibility. And so having that community around you, that's really valuable. Well, that brings us to the end of our 2 conversations together. This has been absolutely wonderful, and thanks so much for sharing everything with us over these 2 episodes. Just before we do officially wrap up, though, I was hoping you could remind everyone listening where they can go online to find out more about you, what you do, and get in touch at your state-of-the-art website. Sorry, I can help myself.
Yeah, I don't have an official website because it just hasn't been necessary, it turns out. But if you Google Pet Project Dog Training, that's my dog training company, and you will find my link tree, which is serving as my temporary website. And that will link you to everything you need, including primarily I'm on Instagram, which is Pet Project Dog Training on Instagram, and working on building my following there. I have a YouTube as well, which you can find via my link tree or my Instagram. And my dog has her own Instagram as well that you can also find if you go to my link tree, because got to promote her. She has more followers than all of my other accounts combined.
Amazing. And we will, of course, link to all of this in the show notes for you, the listener. From the listeners and myself, Keira, thank you so much for taking the time to come and geek out with us at ATA.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for listening as well. This is your host, Ryan Cartledge, signing off from this episode of the Animal Training Academy podcast show. We hope today's conversation inspired you and equipped you with new tools for your trainer's toolbox. Remember, every challenge in training is an opportunity to learn and sharpen your animal training geekery. Embrace the rough patches, learn from them, and keep improving. And don't forget, the path to growing your skills and expanding your knowledge continues beyond this episode. Visit www.atamember.com to join our supportive membership, where you will find a community of trainers just like you. Together, we're making a huge positive difference in the lives of animal and human learners worldwide. Until next time, keep honing your skills, stay awesome, and remember, every interaction with an animal or human learner is your opportunity to create ripples. We're here, cheering you on every step of the way. See you at the next episode.